Okay, we're going to call this one our response. This is part two. Again, you should be doing these because this one being a little bit different than tic tac toe, we are gonna do a test on this one that everybody's going to take. So it's a good idea to get these notes down. This one's going to be really short. We're only going to look at 3 slides here, so you know what's going on. Now, obviously, we talked about this a little bit in class, but at this point in the war, in the beginning, we decided that we're going to stay out of it. There's a few reasons for that. First, there are so many people in this country at this point in history that are immigrants that it would have been hard for us to choose a side. Wisconsin, for instance, was full of Germans, and therefore Wisconsin in the early parts of the war may have leaned towards the German side of things. My great grandfather was a German immigrant, freshly off of a boat from Germany, actually, and he had people in his family that were fighting on that side for the Central Powers. There were also a number of immigrants from the places that are on the Allied powers. The second reason why we decided to stay neutral is it gives us trading power. If we're neutral, we can trade with both sides. We can sell to both sides, both the goods they need to be able to fight each other, but also the food, the medical gear, all of those things. It's a great opportunity to make money. Unfortunately, war is great for business. Now, our response then to move along with the slide here. All right, people were really interested in the war. Obviously, these were their home countries. It was a war of epic proportions. And so newspapers spent a lot of time reporting on the war. You got to remember the average American back then did read a newspaper. The average American household got a newspaper. And so newspapers were the way that you get your information. All right. And so those newspapers saw this as not only an opportunity to report, but an opportunity to make a large amount of money. A lot of Americans felt sympathy for the British or Allied side due to our familiar backgrounds and the cultural links, all right, and the fact that we did have a fairly decent relationship with England, France, and to some extent Russia. Americans, though, tended to distrust the German side of things because we distrusted this Kaiser. First of all, he's a king. I know that sounds a little loopy because almost all the other countries are run by kings too. But the second thing is we had heard very militaristic reports of what was being done in Germany. Basically that they were forcing people in their country into military service if they didn't want to, very undemocratic. And we also heard that there were civilians being killed by the German army instead of just it being a war between two armies. They were killing French civilians and in some cases killing some of their own civilians that didn't go along with what needed to be done. And so the British saw this dislike as an opportunity to try to recruit the Americans into the war. And so they started using propaganda. Now, propaganda is kind of, I don't know if you talk about this in English, advertising with an exaggeration to try to get you pulled into an idea or pulled into something. I think, yes, hang on. These are some examples of some posters that the British sent to the United States that were posted up around in the United States as an attempt to pull us into the war. For instance, that who's absent, who is you? The guys wearing the Union Jack, the British flag as a vest. I love the Wake Up America, civilization calls every man, woman, and child down in the lower right-hand corner. There was one, and I couldn't find a great picture of it. I was so disappointed. A German soldier staring over like the barbed wire trench, and he has these menacing like red eyes and his yellow pointy teeth. And it says, next the Hun comes for your child. And it's kind of creepy. It looks like something straight out of a horror movie, like Krampus is coming to get you or something. I don't know. Now, obviously, though, and I'm going to throw a couple of things on the slide that it doesn't talk about in the reading. Our neutrality was also dictated by that trade power that I talked about. We could sell to both sides. As long as you're neutral, you can make money off of both sides. If you only offer to one side, well, now you're not really neutral anymore, even though you're not fighting. So if we were neutral according to kind of the global rules, and yes, there are rules, the German submarines and the British boats should not be able to attack us. We should be able to trade in peace. However, that's not really a very realistic thing. The one thing that was a little bit difficult about some of this is the Germans generally tend to pay us in cash. The Allies tend to pay us in IOUs and credit. Now, if you think about this, you're like, well, then we should be selling more to the Germans. They're giving us money. But this really kind of in a way helps dictate what side we might get involved in later. The Germans paid us cash. Once the deal is done, the deal is done. The Allies paid us in credit. If they get defeated, we might never see that money. So the trade obviously was important. As far as like the sympathy and the idea of going to war, a lot of Americans thought we should stay isolated out of this war, but they thought we needed to be prepared. They thought we might need to jump in and help one side whoever became our ally when it was necessary. So they thought that there was kind of this need to train, need to expand the size of the army, need to get ourselves ready to go. But there was another side there. There was a peace movement that began. One of the most popular songs of World War One, before World War One, was called "I Didn't Raise My Son to Be a Soldier." It's amazing. It's literally like not Halsey. Okay, there was protests and attempts to change people's opinions. There was a lot of back and forth. The same way that we have back and forth about things like who should carry a gun and who shouldn't carry a gun, or who's right and who's wrong, Democrats or Republicans. They had this argument between the side that wanted to go to war and the side that didn't want to go to war. So that should give you some idea of what we're doing, like from a mindset for the first chunk of time. That's going to be the end of the second video. I know this one was a quick one, but again, SPAR where necessary. The SPAR stands for stop, pause, and rewind. Again, walking around the room, willing to help, or you could chat me or email me if it's after school hours. You guys obviously know I'm here to help. Make sure you guys get this stuff down. Keep working on the projects that you need to do for this. Use your time well. All right. If you have questions, ask.